Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in Theatre 2. My name is Marinda Hall, and I'm the host of yesterday and today, and I'll be here tomorrow as well. I'm very pleased you're here. We have an audience here live in Amsterdam, in the Rai, but we also have an audience through the camera over there. And all these sessions, especially in Theatre 2, will be recorded for all of you to look at a later moment. So if you can't see something you would like to, if you'd like to visit tomorrow, feel free. It's available through the app, through the Intertraffic app you probably have downloaded on your phone. So just so you know. The next 3/4 of an hour are about Google and what you can do as a traffic professional, what you can do with Google, and what you can't do with Google. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a round of applause for Jelle Draaier and Pierre Mare? Welcome. Oops. Yep.
Merci beaucoup.
Take it
Hello,
away.
everyone. Great to have you here today. My name is Jelle Draaier. This is my colleague Pierre Mare. And today we're going to basically take you with us into what can be done as a traffic professional using Google, but also some things you maybe want to use different sources of information for. So that's the part underneath and what's missing. To start off with an anecdote, this is actually the title of a presentation that we prepared in 2020 for Intertraffic, but it got cancelled. So when we were approached by Intertraffic, can you guys come and tell the story 2022? We said, yeah, great, let's do this, because you can do a lot with the Google data and technology. But in the meantime, in the past 2 years, we've also did many projects, and today we're going to tell about 4 of those projects. And we also came to realize, well, we can do a lot with Google Maps data and technology, but sometimes you also need other stuff. And that's where the and what's missing part comes in. So just as a brief introduction, a couple of things that Localize do, and I'll explain a little bit more about who we are in a minute. This is an example of the 2018 show where we provided indoor wayfinding for the Intertraffic show. And we took the liberty in the second picture to publish the Google Maps logo on the Intertraffic floor map ourselves, just to be sure that people knew where we were. So this is a typical project for us. Another one that we're quite busy with at the moment is what happens if you realize Google Maps is not up to date or you're missing something. Maybe an intersection has changed in the map and it doesn't reflect reality. This is actually something that you can approach us for, and we can help you update the Google Maps base map. For example, in this case, the AVAS Experience Center here in the Netherlands, they moved and they built this really big, great-looking vicinity. But as you can see in the map, it didn't reflect exactly what it looked like now. So basically, they approached us, and we helped them to update the base map. And we can also do this, by the way, for other platforms as well. Also TomTom, Waze, and the Here map as well. So that's just a brief kick-off of what's Localize. But to dive more into what's Localize, basically our credo is we put your location data to work. Everything has a location in the world, and there's data you can make out of this. And what Localize is all about is that we help you create value out of this location data. And we started off as a Google Cloud partner, which we still are, with a specialization in location-based services, meaning we offer Google Maps APIs to all kinds of companies. But the past 2 years, we also created an interest in traffic data, and we realized Google Maps is great, but sometimes you need even more types of data to answer all the questions you get. And that's where my colleague Pierre and also the geomobility came in. We have a team focused on traffic and mobility, and basically now we're also a TomTom and a Here partner as well. So we have three very interesting big data sources that we use to answer all kinds of questions that businesses and municipalities, governments approach us with. I promised you to discuss 4 cases today, and the next 30 minutes we're going to do just that. And this is the case 1. It's called branching analysis. Branching analysis started with the question we got from customers who would like to know where the cut-through traffic in the city occurs. Also, they would like to know what are average travel times on certain segments of roads. And they want to visualize this. They want to know where they have to take their measures to cut back on cut-through traffic, for example. So we got this question a lot. Can't you do that with Google Maps real-time traffic data? So we came up with a solution. It's called ODIQ, ODQ. And basically, we use the Google Maps API data as floating car data to basically provide insights into how the road is used, what are congestion points, what are average travel times, what are average speeds. But on top of that, we also realized we can actually monitor when the Google algorithm changes its advice, or basically when the most efficient route is a different one than it was just before. So I'm going to show pictures as well, don't be afraid. The approach is we use Google Maps APIs, real-time traffic. We also use TomTom data because it's great for historic data. Google Maps does not provide historic data. And also we built the whole thing on using Google Cloud, and it works on Google Cloud platform. So what does it look like? Here you can see, obviously on the right-hand corner, the Google Maps map. And you see point A and point B, different routes, having different colors. And every color corresponds with a different advice the Google algorithm gives between point A and B. And the advice it gives is based on basically what's the most efficient route at that time. And what is visualized, what you can see, is that between A and B, at some point in time, you see that the route, the green color, for example, really has a completely different trajectory as the first red or the blue one. Well, what this actually means is at a certain point in time, traveling between point A and point B, this is actually the advice the Google algorithm gives Google Maps users navigating the streets. So it, in some cases, painfully makes clear what is the route traveled with the less resistance. And that's exactly what you want to know when you're investigating, why and at what point in time is the traffic suddenly cut-through traffic, suddenly driving in the middle of a living area, for example. On the left-hand side, you see the interface showing several graphs explaining how long was what route active. And the green route actually is, especially in the evenings, is apparently a popular route in the week that we collected this data. But also you see a lot of red, and that's the dominant default, shortest, most efficient route between A and B. So you can actually have this breakdown to see at what time does the algorithm change its mind. The tool is built by us, by Localize, and it's also a great tool to understand what are average travel times, what are average speeds, and it actually allows you to capture the Google Maps data, and you can export it as a CSV file, but you can also use it to combine with other sources of data as well. For the next case, Pierre.
Thank you, Jelle. Thanks all for joining us. presentation. My name is Pierre Mare. I'm responsible for technology and operations at GeoMobility. GeoMobility is the subdivision of Localize that specializes in traffic and mobility data. The branching, really excited to talk about this, what we've done in the last 2 years. The branching analysis is something that I worked a lot on, my brainchild, and I'm very happy to be able to present it today, and all the other cases that we did as well. What we did for the city of Leuven, and again, you have to keep in mind, all the different data sources have different specifications, different details that they can show, and that they can show. So at some point, the city of Leuven came to us and said, we would like to know where people are driving too fast. Right, and you can do that. Everyone knows that in the city there's always certain places where people are driving too fast and certain places where they don't. But to really know those places, either you have to live there or you have to install a few hundred traffic radars to really assess, to get that data and to have those analysis. But you could take the other route. And first of all, we looked at Google and Google data and see, of course, we have our ODQ platform, see how fast people are driving on average through those streets. But then we saw basically, if you want to look at speeds and where people are driving too fast, you want to look at the V85. Probably everyone here will know what the V85 is, but most importantly, it is the speed that 85% of the road users drive under, right? So if that speed is on or above the traffic limit or the speed limit, you're having an issue there. So we wanted to show the police of Leuven, the police department of Leuven, for their whole city on a week-by-week basis where people are driving too fast and what streets have issues and what streets don't have issues and the impact of different changes that they're doing. What we did is we looked at Google and then we saw we can only see average speeds. So we need to look at a different data source. And that's why we incorporated the here data and build a platform around it. So you can just you log in, you see your whole city, and week by week you can see what happened and how many people we saw driving at certain segments and how fast they were driving. Maximum speed, minimum speed, V85, V50, and so on. So you can do that whole analysis for a whole region at once. Also, we give you access to the raw data so you can see hour by hour what happens on that street segment. Not only on that street segment and not only hour by hour, but day by day and compare it versus the previous day and previous week. So this is what it looks like, and you'll see that you have a map. Not sure whether we need to start the GIF or not, or if it is not moving. Technical team. Yes. So we see a segment here that's being highlighted. Immediately on the right side, we see different kinds of information on the fastest speed, the V85. We can see in the surroundings what happens. So the street that follows it, you can see that people are apparently underneath. They're not driving that fast anymore. Or are they? So if you look at the subsequent segments there, you see that people are actually driving a bit faster, but also the speed limit is rising. So it's not really an issue anymore because they're not driving faster than the speed limit. So we always compare that data to the speed limit and see what that brings. Here you can see the difference between the work week and the weekend and see how those speeds change compared to a weekend and a weekday. And on the right side, we always try to be very transparent. How many probes are we talking about, right? Floating car data, this comes from the navigation data of cars. Keep in mind, there's always a certain market share that we're talking about. We're not looking at 100% of the cars. We're looking at a certain market share, and we always display that market share very clearly, or display the amount of cars very clearly to show you how many cars we are talking about. So with this tool, they're looking at this data and they're actually assessing. Okay, we put a speed radar at some point. Do we see changes in the behavior of the people? After a month, do we see those changes change again because people are accustomed to the radar? Do we see other points popping up? If it's summer and it's a busy market and there's a street passing by, sometimes you have people driving by in fancy cars and trying to impress all the people on the market. Do we see that issue only in summer, or is it also in winter? And when should we actually install a traffic radar? So for them, very, very interesting. Something else that I'd like to show is what we did for the city of Brussels. And this is an excellent example of where we merged Google Maps data and the Google Directions API with other data that we received from other data sources. So really a hybrid solution where we looked at the question of the client and where we saw, okay, can we solve that solely by Google data, or should we add another data source, put those two on top of each other, and create some new insights? And so the question was, we want to have a clear idea where visitors do their shopping and how often. So when are they coming to commercial centers? How often? And if they're using a certain mode of transport, what kind of roads are they using? If we know those two things, if we have those numbers, how can we boost the number of visitors and nudge them into a more sustainable transport mode? And so we came up with a solution where we basically merged telco data with Google Maps data. And how we did that is we identified, here it says 50 relevant locations, that's actually already the solution, but we identified 10,000 points in and around Brussels and see if people are living in the vicinity, when and where, and are they coming to do their shopping in Brussels. If we have that data, so that's what we did with telco. If we have that data, we know where people are coming from, how often they're coming to Brussels. Then we start looking at which transport mode are they using and how are they coming to those commercial centers. And so we used the Google Directions and the Google Routes to basically map all the routes that people can be using from one certain point to a certain commercial center with the different transport modes that they can use. So they could come by bike, they could come by car, and they could come by foot. And then on those crossings of those heavily used routes, so we combined telco data and those routes and to put weight on those different routes. And on those crossings, we identified points where we can nudge them towards a different transport mode, where we can say, you might be coming basically by car, and by car it's 5 minutes in that direction to a commercial center. Actually, by bike, it's 3 minutes in that direction to this commercial center. So why not put your car on the side here and take a bicycle from a bicycle station and continue your route like that? And the second time, maybe the guy will say, okay, that worked, or I saw these signs. Basically, it's my route is as long if I'm driving my bicycle as if I'm driving my car, and it's more convenient. So next time I will take the bike from my initial starting point. So telecom data to understand the postal code visitors came from, and Google Maps APIs to determine the routes depending on the mode of transport. This is the result all over Brussels. You could see real signs pointing people, so really tangible. We're out of the data now, we're out of the theory. This is practice. People pass this by and they see, okay, I want to go to that commercial center. How long is it going to take me with the different transport modes? And so they're being nudged in a more sustainable transport mode, as well as being nudged to go towards these commercial centers. This is a visualization of before we put those two layers on top of each other. So these are all the routes that can be used to go to a certain commercial center within Brussels before we put the weight onto those routes. And if we put the weight onto those routes, this is a certain commercial center that we investigated. If we put the weight onto those routes, you will see that they will show up on the map with opacity depending on how often they are being used. And then if we add those signs on top, we can have a very clear idea of where those signs should be put to reach the maximum amount of people. And if we then multiply this by the 12 commercial centers that we have in Brussels, you get a whole map of Brussels where all these signs need to be placed. Of course, the Google Maps API was then used to determine the travel times for these people and in which direction they should travel per commercial route. Next use case is for Jelle.
Yes, use case number 4, the conflict analysis. So, small recap, we talked about Google Maps APIs. We talked briefly about the TomTom data and the HERE data as well. Great sources of data for the traffic professional. Also, Google Cloud Platform as infrastructure to build these things on. But in some cases, you can't find the answer in big data sources that are available, even though if you have these 3 sources. So this 4th case is about creating your own data set, which really can be beneficial in validating even the big data sources as well, because how sure are we, what kind of data are we looking at? Is this really happening? How can we check if that happens? So we call it conflict analysis, but it's actually called near accident analysis. The problem is that certain junctions in the city, every city has this, unfortunately have their toll of accidents. And what would be interesting to know if you're a city and you want to do something about these accidents, what exactly are you going to do? How are you going to redesign this junction? And what will work or what doesn't work? So we see in practice that many times there are like gut feeling decisions made, people with a lot of experience looking at a situation. Often they're right, but sometimes the suggestions they make won't make a difference, and sometimes certain improvements aren't improvements but actually make things worse as well. So how can you prevent and how can you actually know what's really going on and what can really be a good solution in this case? So the best way, we think, is then simply to go there and to have a look for yourself and to quantify what's going on looking at that crossing. So that's the solution we presented. During a period, in this case, for 7 days, we placed 2 video cameras who monitored a certain crossing, and afterwards we used among other things, AI, but also a manual checkover to actually count the near misses, the near accidents. Sadly, we also witnessed actual accidents happening in this week time, so it was a good junction to monitor. And obviously, we rated all the accidents or near accidents with a certain severity, so that we have an idea what kind of near misses actually happened in that junction. At the end, an external consulting firm actually came up with the improvements you can make on the junction. And the benefit would be not have the decisions, the subjective decisions, but objective decisions that really point to a design that can actually help improve the situation. And now we're obviously waiting for the GIF to see, or I'm not going to show one of the accidents. This is the dashboard, and it shows a couple of situations that were monitored, with an example here of the specific situation. Obviously, there were some statistics provided as well, because we're quantifying what's going on in the dashboard. But this is where it really gets interesting. If you look at the incident breakdown, we select one maneuver. This is a truck taking a turn, and the car coming from the right-hand side was indeed paying attention. And this is an interesting one as well. Watch, the pedestrian got almost hit there, and again almost hit by a bicycle there as well. So during the period of 7 days, we witnessed a lot of these situations. We quantified those, and basically that became the output for the external company to basically come up with a new design for this junction, and to make sure that all the investment done in redesigning that junction really helps the users of the road network as well. To wrap things up, these were 4 cases, all of them having sources of big data in them. We mentioned Google Maps, TomTom here. If you read between the lines, you see that basically all these big data sets have their own characteristics. And our takeaway for you today is be aware of these characteristics and really choose your source that matches the problem you're trying to solve. Google Maps have really high probes. That's great. That's really great for underlying road network. TomTom is really great in historical data. That's why we combine both of them in ODIQ. For speed data, as Pierre mentioned, the here data is great to use. And so there's things like intensities and all kinds of other characteristics differing per big data source. The second one is, with the last case, validate the gut feeling element. In the Netherlands, we have a saying, meten is weten, meaning to measure is to know. And basically, we say, try to get rid of the gut feeling and really measure what's going on. We've seen some use cases where people always think, well, traffic is busy in the morning and it's busy in the afternoon. Well, the data will tell you that story as well. But if you look at what time does the congestion start, then most people will say, well, around 5 o'clock, because we're on the road at 5 o'clock leaving the business or where we work. But in fact, so often we've seen that it actually starts 4 past, half an hour earlier even. So what if you change that window just a little bit, then suddenly you do achieve the traffic flow, or you're there more on time than too late trying to solve something you can't solve in the first place. So validate gut feelings. And last but not least, we're here basically to tell you we can help you with several sources of data. We're here to help you with, if you want to build a dashboard out of this, or just simply use the data. And the point in our mission statement really is to add the value of location data coming from the big sources or coming from your own data as well. And that is our story today. You see a QR code. If you'd like to know more, you can actually scan the code and you'll end up at our website where we have this presentation. And we also have a white paper and contact information. And if there are any questions at this point, we are happy to answer them.
May I have a round of applause for Jelle and Pierre?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any questions? I'm just going to scan the room. Do I see a hand? Yes. Could you introduce yourself again, because I saw you last time? Yeah.
Yes, Ricardo Budraki. I operate highways in the US. And on case number 4, how do you use artificial intelligence to predict, I don't know, risk situations?
Well, not so
Thank you.
predicting.
Well,
it's more measuring, right?
It's really measuring. It's near miss analysis. So near miss. And so we're not predicting. We're just looking at the data and at what we're capturing with the cameras, seeing what kind of near miss we are seeing and what happens a lot of times, and then assessing the gravity of those infringements or those almost collisions. So it's really analyzing with AI the flows of the cars, the movements of the different cars, and how close they come, and whether we see any infringements on should I say, what is possible on the road and what isn't. And then we use that data to really to put an analysis on top and to make sure that the traffic engineers can help the client with adjusting that situation. So it's not exactly, we're not predicting anything, but we're looking at the past to see what will probably happen in the future. The tip of the iceberg, an accident is the tip of the iceberg. And by not looking at the tip of the iceberg, when there is an accident, but looking at the whole iceberg beneath with the near-miss accidents, we will be able to say, if we leave it like that, probably this is going to be, it happens so much that there's almost an accident, there will at some point be an accident. So that.
Okay, hold on, because people can't hear you. Yeah.
But you use it to, you stream the video source and you use it to identify risk situations.
Yep.
And I guess got a portion of the video to be analyzed by human eye, or how do you use it?
There's always, so in this case, it's a short-term analysis, a 3 to 7 day analysis, and we put AI to go through the bulk of the data, but we always have, for these short-term assessments, always have human eyes to look at it, because there's always specificities in this cross-section, and so it's really important to have these human eyes and this human understanding looking at what we're seeing there as well. So there's two layers, basically, the bulk and then the.
This is an interesting question because I don't need to use this. An interesting question because the next presentation is about AI-driven intersection safety diagnostics. So that's interesting, the human eye and the AI, artificial intelligence. So if you're interested, stay put for the next one. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Özgür from Turkish Gendarmerie Traffic Services. I want to ask a question about case 3, the number of visitors for shopping centers. Can we enlarge the model to all the touristic destinations in a country? Because increasing mobility during tourism seasons is a major cause of accidents, especially tourist buses, minibuses, when they are involved in accidents, result in multi-fatalities.
Okay,
so
multi-fatalities.
We need the data of touristic
mobility.
Are we talking about the telco analysis, or are we talking about the near-miss analysis there?
Data taken from the users.
The data taken from the users.
Mobile.
Yeah, so with telco, one of the characteristics of that specific data source, so the telco data, is that you can go very broad. So it's nationally, it's if you have telco data, it's almost always nationally. So you can have a very good look at where the most people are at what point, how often do they go, where are they coming from, maybe what country they're coming from as well. So it can be enlarged to a national field, definitely, to see where people are coming from. Yeah.
Great, thank you for the question. I have another one over here. Could you please introduce yourself as well?
Sure, my name is Saad Al-Mubayyid, THTC Saudi Arabia and Dubai UAE. My question is regarding case number 1, which is about branching and the source of data that you have used. And towards the end, then you talked about which data is good for what purpose. You have used TomTom data for historical data, but you use Google for live data. Again, to my knowledge and experience, TomTom is also good for live traffic information. So since historical data is only available for TomTom, why not, for example, using both from TomTom?
Yeah. Well, obviously, that's a good question, because where we say look at the characteristics to make sure that the type of data actually helps answer your question, at the same time there's a lot of overlap as well. So in terms of real-time data, basically all 3 sources could suffice, yes. The reason in our case for the branching analysis why we used the Google Maps data is because we started out as a Google Maps partner. The framework was developed already 3-4 years ago. It's been updated ever since, and basically we also found it really interesting that Google is really about using the data as a service in real time as much as possible. Google does not allow you to basically scan, grab and store the data. But because we are a Google Maps partner, or a Google Cloud partner, I should say, we actually came to an agreement with Google in how far we can go with actually storing the data. So that combined with the fact that at least in the Benelux area where we started out, we realized this is a really rich source of data for that area, as basically it's almost like telco data, basically. In the long term, I mean, yeah, it differs per country because the market share of navigation solutions is every time it's different per country. So it could be in certain countries that we have a customer, actually it's Qatar for the football event preparations. And we started out talking about ODIQ, but we ended up delivering Waze data even because it was a more popular app, so there's more data in that area of the world.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Here.
No, thank you. Oh,
One
oh
question.
sorry, I didn't see you. Could you introduce yourself as well, please?
Hi, I'm Samuel Salini from Movion, ITS tech provider. My question is about the third use case, so the city of Brussels again. It is really interesting because you were using data from people movement, so mobility of people, not of vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Have you measured somehow the impact of your solution? So did it help the city?
Yes, we are measuring it at the moment. The signs have been in place, I think, now for a month and a half. So we are waiting until should I say, everyone's accustomed to it, and to really measure that impact. That will be after 6 months after that that the signs were put in place. Maybe a small caveat there. We did a benchmark first to see how many people are coming and where they are coming from. Obviously, that benchmark was in 2021. How many people were going fun shopping in 2021? Probably not that many. So I can already say now that our solution will have been hugely effective, but we'll have to take into account also these changes. So we'll probably benchmark it as well with another region where we didn't do it yet, and then see how much we see of an increase we see there, and whether that increased more in the region where we put those signs.
Great questions. Thank you once again, Jelle Draaier and Pierre Mare.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Our next presentation is at 2:15, and we were talking about intersections and safety. This is AI-driven intersection safety, diagnostics, and proven countermeasures using retroreflective materials. That's 3M will be here later on. See you at 2:15 and enjoy the rest of your day.